by Republicans. There might be some truth to that, but if you're a Republican, you're seen as the enemy by the entire other half of the country. I mean, nothing is more toxic to a Democrat than a Republican, and vice versa. Whereas in the Libertarian Party, you kind of can speak to both of them and not be seen as so much of an enemy, because it's not. Most people don't even really know that much about the third party. And I gotta say, I think if you approach it the right way, you can be a Libertarian and talk to left-wingers and right-wingers. And I've had a lot of success doing that, and I think oftentimes not seen as the enemy right away because I'm a member of the Libertarian Party. Look, I do agree with you that there are some local and state level victories that really should be appreciated. And like DeSantis is absolutely, it's heroic what he's done on the COVID stuff in general. I mean, and he has given real people, and people who I know like yourself and people I really care about like Tom, and he's got 5 daughters, and they all have better lives because he's their governor. However, it does seem like that game always puts us on the losing end. That the federal government's always going to be getting bigger and bigger, and we're going to be losing more liberty and be on this unsustainable course. Unless there's some type of awakening. And I think that right now is the most fertile time for there to be a huge awakening. And I don't know, of the Republicans, even of the ones who are good, the ones you're talking about who are kind of outside of the neocon establishment like Gates or DeSantis, I mean, let's just be brutally honest about how good they really are. Because, DeSantis was good on COVID, but he's really not that great overall. Like, his politics really aren't very good. What would a DeSantis presidency look like? It probably wouldn't be great. I'll say, when you say that these Republicans view this election as illegitimate, that was true of the Democrats with George W. Bush. Now, maybe not to the exact same level that it is today, but George W. Bush lost the popular vote, and that was a big thing around the year 2000. When he started doing all his George W. Bush things, that was the first thing the Democrats would always say, that Al Gore was the legitimate president. He wasn't. And this is why Lou Rockwell...
True with Trump and Hillary, too.
Yeah. And this is why Lou Rockwell was writing pieces in the George W. Bush years about how much more reasonable the left was than the right. And how I'd much rather be reading The Nation magazine than reading National Review. And a lot of times I think libertarians can fall into this trap where whoever has power, it's easy to be more sympathetic to the side that's reactionary against them because they're reacting against all of the bad guys. All these Trump supporters are against CNN and the CIA and, whoever, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and all of that. But what would it really look like when they get in power? What did it really look like when they got in power? And I got to say, I just don't even, so is DeSantis, would you be, enthusiastic to support a DeSantis presidency? I've looked into him a little bit more since we, planned to do this debate, and I really only knew the COVID stuff about him. I mean, he is just awful on foreign policy. Awful. He refers to himself as the most pro-Israel governor in the country. He railed against Obama for the Iran deal and said that the Obama administration was kinder to the Cubans and Iranians than he was to Netanyahu. That's what he sees our problem in foreign policy. We're not friendly enough with Israel. That's his issue. I mean, what type of real change is this guy going to make?
As far as though, defend your boy.
Yeah, well, it comes down to this: is that one of the things that we talked that has been, I think, that you and Michael Malice have really pushed in the mainstream of libertarian understanding is the fact that the powers that be, the real power structures here, are not from the state. Right? It's the media, it's the universities, it's the cathedrals, the public policy experts. And so when I look at DeSantis, I don't see a libertarian. I don't say he's not a libertarian. What I do see, though, is someone who's stood up to these institutions' power. Show me anyone. Show me anyone else in the country that has victories and has actually put action behind standing up to these people. He's taking on the media. I mean, some of this, of course, is him mirroring Donald Trump's shtick, right? He's trying to fill the same base, which again, I think shows a level.
Do you even see him? He's like the hand motions.
Oh yeah. You can very clearly tell.
He's in a hand motion, coach.
Okay, what's up, guys? I was just getting some of the housekeeping done here. We will not have Steven in today, unfortunately. We couldn't get our connection to work out between the two of us. I'm still on the hotel internet. I'm crammed into a little corner of the hotel. We're on vacation. Amy and I are on vacation up to Washington State to visit my family. And, excuse me. So we decided to try to jump on here and do a live show outside our normal schedule, just to try to talk about some of the stuff that's going on in the libertarian, I guess, broadly libertarian political community. And Dave Smith and Tho Bishop had their debate recently, and people are talking about that. And then I got tagged in on a thread on Twitter where a good friend of the show, Adam Patrick, was having a conversation with a few people. And then our boy Popular Liberty jumped in there too, talking about... I tried to think of a way to kind of condense it into like one frame, and it's basically just like what libertarians are missing. So that's what I just wanted to kind of share some of my thoughts on that here real quick. I don't know how long the show will be today. Probably not super long because my dear sweet wife is out in the lobby of the hotel with the little man. Hopefully he's still sleeping in his stroller. And then Popular Liberty, a link to what? What are you wanting a link to? So let's see here. Let me pull up. So what I was listening to there, I wasn't necessarily playing that for the sake of you guys to hear. I was just trying to get through as much of this Dave Smith, Tho Bishop conversation as I could. so that I can kind of prepare my thoughts on exactly how I feel. And my thoughts are very much in their infancy, kind of. I don't have a completely fleshed out position on what they're saying, because I try to, especially with people that I respect, like Dave, like Tho, when I listen to them, I want to leave open the possibility that they bring something new to the table that I haven't thought of, and so I'm willing to change my opinion as I encounter new information, and as I try to incorporate everything into like a new body of knowledge that I can use going forward. And so coming into this conversation, I'm very much inclined to agree with Tho. And thus far, I haven't really heard anything from Dave that has changed my opinion. I'm 36 minutes in, so let me see if I can get Popular Liberty in here. Let me send you a link real quick, buddy, and then we'll see if we can do this. Pull out. Let's see what's going to be the easiest way to get this link. I can't open anything else on my computer, or it's going to freak out. Do you still have the link that I sent you last time? If you have the last link, then that'll do the trick. Let me see if I have it in one of these old conversations. Take this, and how do I search? Search the conversation. I should have thought of that before I went live, that we could have him pop in here too. All right, so bear with me here for a second, folks. And that is not there. Okay, let's try this other conversation. Ecamm is fantastic. You just do it through a browser, so you just have to have the link to get into it. But then if you lose the link, then I'll just try to open up another program on my computer here to send it out. I didn't want to do that because there's a very good chance that my computer will bog down and we'll lose the stream altogether, but we're going to take the gamble. Okay, so you're not going to open. There it is. Okay. I know this is absolutely gripping television to watch. Okay, so if I can send this here. Okay. I'm waiting for the messaging app to open so I can send it to him. Currently listening to the debate. Also check out Fuentes versus Barnes. I heard about that. Nick Fuentes and Robert Barnes apparently had it out, and it was one of those where everyone came away saying that the guy that they liked the best clearly won. So it was a real good debate if nobody actually had their minds changed. I think so. This conversation I got tagged in on Twitter as I'm waiting for this to open up. Okay, you can't do it. That's okay. I'll send you the link just in case something changes. You can just hop in at whatever point, and I'll just bring you in. Okay, so this conversation I got tagged in on Twitter actually ties into the Tho versus Dave conversation, because really what this is more broadly, Tho and Dave are kind of debating Libertarian Party versus GOP, like which is the better political path forward for actually changing something. And really that's just a subset of the broader conversation, which is what should libertarians do? Like what should they be occupying themselves with? How do we spread liberty? Like that's kind of the broadest question. Like what's the best way to spread liberty? And it's interesting to me that a movement that is ostensibly based on number one, what is best for humanity, what promotes the most prosperity, which is something that ostensibly everybody wants. Everyone wants prosperity. Not necessarily for everyone, but if everyone wants prosperity, then if you're selling a message that is, hey, this gets everyone the most prosperity, you think that would be a message that you could sell relatively easily. But it's interesting to me that people who have this message that ostensibly is the best for everyone, and they're talking about the best ways to communicate it to people, they're not talking about what is the most persuasive way to communicate this message. or even what is the most persuasive message to communicate. They're talking about what platform can we use to get in front of the most people. So it's a very pragmatic approach, I guess, kind of on its face. And it's kind of funny that it's a little autistic, that they're not like, okay, they're not thinking of it from an empathetic standpoint. Like, how do I make myself most appealing to the people who I'm trying to appeal to? The conversation that we're all having is, how do we blast this in front of the most people possible? As if the message itself is just so self-evidently true that all you have to do is get it in front of people, and then they're going to be happy with it and just accept it. Like, the biggest problem with it's like everyone is just one toenail away from being a libertarian. They just haven't ever had it explained to them properly. And if someone just came and explained it to them properly, then of course in the Fed, all these wars are bad. Minimum wage is a great way to hurt poor people. Like that they're just going to start parroting all this stuff. If you just get the message in front of them, there's no conversation really being had about what message has been the most successful at actually changing something. Not at getting people to talk about it, but at actually changing something. And if you're going to have that conversation, well, then you have to have the conversation of, well, okay, what are the ideal conditions for liberty to thrive? How do we create a fertile soil for liberty? What does that require? What does that entail? And that's the conversation that people need to be having. This, what platform can we? Well, what's the best platform we can get to just machine gun this message out to the most people possible? That assumes that you already have the best message. But I would contend that if your ideas are as good as you think they are, they should be taking off. There should be no, like, you shouldn't be having to have a conversation about, do we take over the third party or not? If your ideas are this good, why aren't you taking over a major party? And if you don't think that you can take over a major party, why? Is it because, our ideas are unpopular and people don't want to hear them, therefore we won't be as successful in a major party? If that's the case, then I think that tells you something about your ideas, that maybe your ideas aren't as good as you think they are. Maybe they're good to you, but they're not good to others. Other people don't care about them. And so if you're trying to spread them in a democratic process, in a democratic context, they're going to have to be appealing to other people. So if they're not, that's not the problem of the other people, and that's not the problem of the medium. That's the problem that's your problem. You're the one who has to fix that. So I think that just kind of from the jump, I think a lot of these conversations are being had in the wrong venue, or within the wrong context. However, with this Tho Bishop, Dave Smith conversation, I think that there's a little bit of a difference there, because I think that everything that I just said applies to Dave's ideas. It doesn't apply to Tho's ideas. Tho's ideas are ready for mass consumption. Tho has a message that will appeal to a lot of people. And a lot of libertarians hear that message, they see what he has to say, and they say, that's not real libertarianism. So it doesn't do us any good to have that message spread. Because that's not, all you did is convert people to something that's not libertarianism, and you still have to go out and convert them to libertarianism. And I don't really know where to start to convince someone of how wrong they are, if that's their opinion. So that's part of why when I tell you guys to share this show, I say share it with people who are likely to agree with it, because I don't want to be in the business of trying to change people's minds who aren't inclined to agree with me already. I think that I think all of us have a calling, something baked in deep down in us that creates a longing that pulls us towards something. And I think it's up to us to figure out the best way to respond to that call. And I don't feel that my calling is to expend the amount of energy required to persuade people who don't already agree with me. I would much rather go for the path of less resistance and just talk to people who are already inclined to agree with me and to try to explain to them why they agree with me and to reinforce the fact that they agree with me. So, okay, so this Tho and Dave conversation kind of, it mirrors this Twitter conversation that I was tagged in. So I'll go through that Twitter conversation and see some of the comments you guys are having, and we'll continue with it from there. So, what's up, guys? I see people in the Facebook comments. Good to see. My Auntie Lane is in there. What's up, Aunt Lane? And then our okay, YouTube comments are hopping too. So. Okay, so if you get the link, Popular Liberty, and your handyman problem solves itself, then go ahead and just hop in. Let me try to do this process of sending it again. And then I'm going to read our little advertisement from our dear sponsors here, and we'll get this show on the road. So, ignore that. Okay. Closed. And I'll pop this open. I have to go from one messaging platform to another and copy link and send it here and whammo. Okay, there you go, Popular Liberty. You got the link there now, so when it if you can hop in, then go ahead and just hop in at whatever point, and I'll bring you in. Okay, so first of all, let me give you a little read here for our sponsor. So our sponsor, we've actually got the sponsor is watching the show right here, Carlos Abilar. He and his wife Vanessa own Paloma Verde CBD, and it's a fantastic CBD product. I've never really used CBD consistently because I just anytime that I tried it, it didn't really seem to have that much of an effect with me. And so I was like, whatever, this just isn't that interesting. And then I tried this Paloma Verde because I heard Thaddeus Russell on his Unregistered podcast raved about them. And I was like, well, I guess I'll give it another shot. So I tried some Paloma Verde, and I really, really enjoyed it. They've got gummies. They have their strawberry lemonade flavor, which I really like. And then they've got a green apple that's also good. Those gummies are fantastic, 10 milligrams per gummy. And then they've got soft gels. They've got a salve. They've got the tincture. You can drop the tincture under your tongue. We've actually been using it for our little boy to when he's having a hard time sleeping, if his teeth are giving him grief. And it's definitely improved his sleep. It seems like to me when I see the times after he's had it, he seems to be calmer and gets a better sleep. So the place to go to get it is palomaverdecbd.com, PALOMAVERDECBD.com. Use promo code KING for 25% off any order over $75. And you can get a lot of good stuff for $75 there. There's a lot of different options to choose from, and actually, what I would give a shout out to the what's called the unregistered pack, which is a special pack they put together for Thaddeus Russell's listeners. I'll shout it out here because it's a fantastic deal. I don't remember what all you get with it. You can check on the website palomaverdecbd.com, but you get the Wyman says Matt's flying solo just like Uncle Ted. You get the gummies, you get the soft gels, you get the muscle rub and the tincture. I think it's all those all together, and it's really, really good stuff. So go over there, let them know that you support us by using promo code KING, and you'll get 25% off any order of $75. They'll know that you came from us, and you'll be supporting a great family-owned business. They've got they're just a beautiful little family that is doing good work. And you can also check out Carlos's podcast, Los Libertinos, Chingazos and Fire. He actually has reached out to me to go on the show, and as soon as I get back from vacation, I'll be doing that. Looking forward to talking to him. He's a really good dude. So yes, that is our ad read. So then Popular Liberty says he'll be jumping in here in just a few minutes, so I'll just kind of kill a little bit of time before I really get into this conversation because he was in the conversation, so we might as well get his feedback on it as well. So back to what I was saying before. Popular Liberty says in the comments, Tho is ready for business. He just needs to get some people to help him organize. Right. Tho has a message that is palatable to the masses, that is politically palatable, especially at the local level, which is where you can really make a difference. Because the real ironic thing here is people keep telling me that they're like, oh no, Dave actually really cares about the local level politics. Like that's where the LPMC is really interested. You know, he's not actually trying to like get power or anything. It's just kind of like there's this thing he's going to do with the president, but then you know he really cares about making a difference at the local level. But he never talks about it. I don't see this. I don't see this sentiment you guys are saying that like this is actually his focus. I don't see that. It seems to me like his focus is we need to use the presidential election platform as a bully pulpit and just spread this message to as many people as possible. Just throw it out in front of people just as it is now. Like message is good enough. We've got all the right ideas or the best ideas. Nobody's got ideas like us. So let's just go, I've got this image of like I was just driving through the countryside of central California and southern central Oregon. And there's all these farming communities that have those gigantic sprinklers that are just like, all like massive streams. That's kind of the vision I have of how libertarians see themselves. Is they're just like, we just need to get this stream to be longer. If we just had the stream longer, then everything would be better. We'd all be fine. And I'm not seeing it. I don't see that you have the problem isn't with the reach. Lots of people know what libertarians are. Plenty of people know what the libertarian position is. They just don't care about it. They don't like it. It's not appealing to them. It doesn't do anything for them. And like I've said before, in marketing, if you have if your message isn't selling, the problem is with you and your message. The problem is not with the people who aren't buying it. Now, there's times where if your message is not a broad message, if your message is narrow and focused and it's not selling, then it could be that you're trying to sell it to the wrong people. It could be that you have the wrong audience and you need to filter for a different audience and focus that message on the right people. But that's not what I'm hearing. I'm not hearing we have a narrow focused message and we just need to get it in front of the right people. Because another thing you can do is you can have a broad message and or even you can have a narrow message and you can deliver it broadly with the understanding that the people who you actually want to reach are out there. And if you might spread this message in front of 10,000 people and you're looking for the 50 in there who are going to respond to it, and you don't care about the rest of them, the 9,950 people, you don't care about them. You care about the 50 that you're looking for. That's that's a legitimate strategy. That's a legitimate messaging strategy. But what I'm hearing is the LPMC and Dave and all of this is what they're talking about is basically we need to create a revival. We need to create a political revival, somewhere between a revival and a revolution. And we need to get this message in front of as many people as possible and get everyone super excited and geared up. And for what? I don't know. Like what? Get up for what? Like to just get really mad at the state? And then what do you want them to do? Do you want them to stop voting? So, have even fewer people determine policy? I don't understand the call to action here. And I don't think there is one. I think that's a problem. The problem is you don't have a call to action. If you don't have a call to action, you don't know what your message should be. Once you know your call to action, then you can determine your message, because now you're just talking about an engineering problem. You're like, this is what I want people to do. This is what they're doing. How do I get them to stop doing this and start doing this? But to do that, you have to understand them and you have to appreciate them. You have to value them and not just see them as political capital. Because that's what this LPMC thing is basically just treating people as political capital. You're trying to function within a democracy with an anti-democratic message. You're engaged in a performative contradiction. And it's so obvious to me that it's hard to understand what people don't get about that. But what it comes back to is libertarians being not so socially inclined. They don't understand the mechanisms that move society. They don't understand the forces that it's fundamentally a very rationalist movement, and people are irrational. You can't appeal to them on a rational basis. You have to understand the message that they want to hear, and you have to deliver your message to them in terms they understand. And you have to make your call to action so appealing that it seems better than doing what they were doing before. And just telling them, like Dave was saying earlier in this conversation, and to be fair, I've only listened to like half an hour, like 35 minutes of this particular conversation. So it's possible that they got back into this later on. But he was saying, basically, because Tho's talking about, these right-wing people feel this way and they're allies to liberty and we need to bring them on board. And he said, well, they need to understand that their ideas are the problem too. They don't have everything right, and they're responsible for creating this mess that we're in too. And if that's your approach, like that reveals something about the psychology behind your message. That you're reaching out to these people to tell them that their ideas are wrong. That's your approach. Your fundamental message is your ideas are wrong, our ideas are right. Here's all the reasons why our ideas are right. Let's sit down and make a list, and I'll explain to you all the reasons why your ideas are wrong and my ideas are right. I don't feel like I should have to try to justify why that's a bad approach if you're trying to get popular support for your movement. I'm not saying their ideas aren't right or that their ideas are right. I'm saying that is not the way to convince them of it. Here's Popular Liberty. Okay, let's pop him up in this. There we go. Hey, I hear me.
I'm saying that.
All right, can you hear me?
Okay, let's pop him up in this. There we go.
One sec. I know there's be a bit of an echo. One sec. I still have you on my phone.
I'm hearing myself say that I can hear myself.
Yeah. I had you on my phone, so I was kind of listening in, and all right, there we go. I mean, now I have other muted.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay.
All right. You hear me fine? We're good.
Yeah. The stream is a little
perfect.
jumpy, but it's probably just going to settle in. It's probably because you were streaming two things at once.
Yeah, that's all right.
Okay. Let me check the comments here real quick. Mark says LPMC's strategy is a wider lens. It appears like they haven't talked to a conservative or liberal in real life. Yeah. That Joshua Ferguson's video, I actually I don't have anything against the guy, and I think I've seen him before. I think I've come across him in Part of the Problem, and I think he's a good guy. And I understand where he was coming from with that video, but I actually watched it last night, and I vehemently disagreed with his position on that. But it isn't necessarily. I think that he's right in his criticism of the LPMC and saying that they're kind of hypocrites, or that they're that's even too strong of a word, because I don't necessarily want to attribute malice, but basically that they're being inconsistent. Right, they're going against their own principles. Their messaging is going against their own principles, because now they're like, well, we need to. They realize, like, fundamentally, they get into politics and they're like, okay, all right, we're here. So what now? Oh, okay. Well, we need numbers, man. Oh man, oh man, oh man. It's like you got up to the battlefield and you like see the armies arrayed against you, and you're like, holy crap, we need numbers. So, let's see. let's see, how can we fit your message into ours? Yeah, that works. Okay, you here, like this is the approach that they take. Like this is the natural political approach. And the fact that they start doing that right away, even though it directly contradicts the principles upon which they formed the caucus, reveals just how powerful this nature of politics is and how inevitable it is. So I agree with his criticism of the LPMC in that sense. I vehemently disagree with his assessment of the person he talked about. I don't want to air out too many people in this because I don't want this conversation to be focused on that. I want to keep it focused on the subject today. So, but I don't have a problem with Joshua, and I'd be happy to talk to him about this if he saw fit. I like his whole setup. I think he looks great. I think his video quality is fantastic. And I appreciate the extent to which he went to put that video together. So, and then one other thing here, Adam Patrick said, here in Connecticut, the LP focuses a lot on what's going on in the Republican Party. There's very little interest or concern for the LP National. Can't say that wasn't a goal of mine, but they were already doing it. I think that's, if you're going to do it, that's the way to do it. Focus on the stuff that actually matters, not the stuff that doesn't, like the National LP. And then Justin says Indiana LP is solely focused on trying to remove non-liberty friendly Republicans and basically ignoring the National LP. That's the way to use a third party. The third party, you're never going to win anything with it. But what you're doing is you're wielding a spoiler device, and you're wielding a device that you use to hold the other people accountable, to hold the other parties accountable. If you're going to use your party that way, like it's a pragmatic thing. Because fundamentally, the nature of politics is about accumulating power. That's what you go into politics for. So if you're going into politics for something other than accumulating power, you're engaged in, let me see if I can put it in libertarian terms. You are the market inefficiency. You are being a market inefficiency. You're embodying market inefficiency by going into politics for something other than accumulation of power. Dave said something earlier in that conversation as well, that he was like, well, no, politics is about messaging as well. Politics is about messaging after the message has been established. Politics is about messaging. It's about reinforcing already established messaging. It's about signaling. It's not about education. It's not about evangelism. What they're doing in a national level electoral politics setting is they are doing kind of like a callback routine with all of the people to ensure that all of the constituents have properly ingested and what would you say, like formed themselves to the message that they were delivered through popular media, through their university education, through all of the indoctrination institutions. National level politics is about politicians signaling, hey, all of that stuff that you learned, that you've heard about, that's what I am. So come join my team because I'm all of those things. It's not a platform that you use to go educate people on your positions. If you're using politics that way, you're buying into the Democratic lie, the lower D, the little d. You're buying into the lie of the little d's. If you're trying to use politics as an educational, evangelistic platform. What are your thoughts, Bobby?
Moreover, like I saw this a lot when I was block walking, over the last year in 2020, is that most people are not ideological. Even right-wingers, they're mostly not ideological. And so the idea that you're going to, or that you even need to convince people, that you need to change hearts and minds, I think that's just completely incorrect. Because if you're, again, like if you're not going into politics for power, you're in the wrong business. This is not for you. Like politics is for power, and you need to be getting you need to be doing and tailoring your message to the point where to the end where you're going to be getting power for it. And if you don't need to convince someone, if they're willing to vote for you without you changing anything, without you having a message, like if your message is, if it doesn't matter, that's like, you don't need to change that person's mind. You don't need to convert every single person, because a lot of them will just vote for you because you look nice. That's like, you look like a nice person. That's the, like, that is very, very, very common. And, I saw this over and over and over again. Like, they might have like one issue that they really care about. And as long as you can talk pretty competently on that and you show the right, virtue signals. And, by the way, this is like the mockingbird strategy. You need to, libertarians, if you want to get elected, adopt the mockingbird strategy. All you need to do is parrot the correct, words and phrases back, and people are pretty okay with that. That works a lot. And like, you don't actually need to convert anybody. And I think that's they have this in their mind because they were all converted. And so they think that, oh, everyone, I was converted. Everyone who thinks like me was converted, and therefore I need to go out, evangelize to convert all the other people. And and again, politics is something of a religion too, but it's a religion of power, and that's kind of the active constraint there, is that you need to be, in order to properly practice that religion, you need to be getting power, and and that means you have to be spending your resources wisely, because let's face it, you're a libertarian, resources are scarce. So let's be no, seriously, you're scarce on manpower, you're scarce on wealth and financing, you're scarce on enthusiasm, and quite a few other things. You don't have the time or you don't have the bandwidth to be squandering based on converting every single individual person. You need to be just, I will accept any vote. I will take any vote just because, for any reason. If they think I have a nice face, or they think the other guy's an asshole, or that, or just any reason whatsoever, take it. Someone who's willing to vote for you without having their mind changed is like, good, take it, move on. That's the correct way of looking at that. But they want to say, no, I have to go to every person's door, knock on it, and then convince, and kind of like they're like a Mormon, and say, have you heard of the good news of our Lord and Savior liberty? It's like, or worse, it's like, do you have 3 hours to talk about Federal Reserve policy?
Why does nobody like us?
I know, it's like, this is they're the Mormons of the comments section. But it's like, and I say that out of a lot of love.
Right.
I think I'm starting to find a term for myself, which is anti-libertarian. Not like I'm against libertarians, but like a libertarian is to an anti-libertarian the way a hero is to an anti-hero. Like, right. You need to be taking a little bit more of an anti-hero approach, because, like, let's face it, the heroic Ron Paul approach that Dave has really come to fall in love with, that's a heroic approach. Ron Paul had heroic virtues of principle and goodness, and and he really practiced all the things he stood for, and he was kind of successful at it. But you can turn around and look at all of the others who are really being successful, like Rand Paul. He's taking a little bit, it's not quite a full anti-heroic approach, but he's having a lot more anti-heroic virtues than heroic virtues. And you know what? He's really getting stuff done to the point where they're trying to kill him multiple times. It's like, anti-heroic approach will work far more, because, and let's face it, you're going up against real villains. This is a lot more. This is reality. And sorry, heroes tend not to win. Especially when you're on the evil playing field of democracy. Let's face it, the whole stadium that we're playing in is like manifestly evil. They declared war on private democracy is a declaration of war on private property. So, we're on the enemy's playing field, and it's like, okay, we're storing their castle, it's their stadium. They have all of the rules in their favor. And being a hero isn't probably going to get you very far, and we've tried that a lot, and it doesn't really work very well. It kind of has some appeal, but let's face it, the anti-heroes are kind of winning the day. They're kind of getting a lot more done than the heroes are.
There's actually a good illustration of this. It's Pareto, when he talked about the circulation of the elite, that there's two different types of elite rulers. There's the foxes and there's the lions. And
Yeah.
the foxes, he says, they're those who dominate mainly through combinazione or combination. They through deceit, through cunning, through manipulation, and through co-optation. Their rule is characterized by decentralization, plurality, and skepticism, and they are uneasy with the use of force. Lions, on the other hand, are more conservative. They emphasize unity, homogeneity, established ways, the established faith, and rule through small, centralized, and hierarchical bureaucracies, and they are far more at ease with the use of force than the devious foxes. History is the slow swing of the pendulum from one type of the elite to the other, from foxes to lions and back again. What you're describing, the anti-hero approach, is the fox approach. It's the devious, cunning approach, and it's manipulation basically, and that's the nature of the democratic system. Is a system of foxes, especially post FDR. That's the nature of how the system works. The libertarian message that they're trying to sell is a heroic message. They're trying to sell a lion message in a fox den, and it just does. It's not ever going to be a it's not going to be successful because it's the wrong tool for the job. It won't. If you're wanting to go, so here's where I think where we really get down to the nuts and bolts of this. That there's multiple different conversations being had right now, but they're being had in like people are having different conversations toward each other at the same time. So the first conversation that everyone kind of thinks they're having is they say, well, okay, LP versus GOP. And then maybe a macrocosm of that would be politics versus not politics, because that's kind of the same thing. Like the LP versus GOP is just sort of like a fractal version of the politics versus not politics, because it kind of comes down to, well, how much are we going to compromise our principles and how much are we going to stay true to our principles? And the problem with libertarians is that getting involved in politics is an inherent contradiction of your principles. Your principles should dictate to you that you don't get involved in politics at all. If you're going to get involved in politics, you can't call yourself a libertarian, because the libertarian, like the premise of your ideology is that we don't search for political solutions. We search for private solutions instead. And you're going to get all kinds of conversation about minarchy and anarchy and all that. Spare us. We're past Libertarian 101. If you still want to argue about those things, I'm not going to explain to you why we're not going to have that conversation, but we're not having that conversation on this platform. This is, if you're getting involved in politics as a libertarian, you are now engaged in a performative contradiction. You're fundamentally hypocritical in your approach, and people smell that. You were going to say something.
Oh yeah, and there's okay, that's the first thing. It's either what you said, or it's this opposite, or it's the opposite, where okay, either getting involved in politics is an inherent contradiction of libertarian principles, or it's like what I've said is that democracy is a declaration of war on private property, and if your enemy has declared an aggressive war on you, okay, it's open season. At that point, anything defensive, any war tactics that you can employ, anything goes, because all's fair in love and war. And if you're saying, okay, well, the enemy has declared war on us, but we have to fight it through these X, Y, and Z rules, and we cannot break them. And it's like, okay, well, now the enemy knows your weakness, and so okay, you need to either you be fighting aggression with aggression, because let's face it, it's either you really believe, okay, that getting involved in democracy at all is an aggression, and by the way, it is, but you can have a defensive aggression. You can have aggression on defense, and by the way, this is another kind of subtle contradiction, is that they claim they believe in defensive use of force, but you know what the best defense is? A good offense. And so it's like that. Yeah, that's exactly the okay, so you can say I believe in defense, but hey, what actually really works for defense? Attack.
Right.
And it's like you can't win on defense, but even that. So, and if you believe if you believe that democracy is immoral, okay, you shouldn't be involved at all. And now if you believe, as I do, that, and I think as Matt does as well, that democracy is a declaration of war, it's like, all right, then anything goes. And you need to, ditch the principles because they don't apply. you don't fight fair against an enemy that really wants you either dead or enslaved. It's like, and this is something I think Michael Malice, he says it a lot, and it really resonates with me every time he does. He says like that, they want to kill your children. The enemy, they want you dead, but they will settle for your submission, and they want to kill your children. It's like that. It's like, what sort of enemy? Why would you be principled in facing this sort of enemy? It's like, you shouldn't. And frankly, I think it's immoral to use libertarian principles to combat this, because they're not effective. They're defensive only.
Right.
And I think that's this is where a lot of libertarians go wrong, is that they focus so much on the inputs. Actually, Tho made this point on Facebook the other day. I'm not Facebook, Twitter the other day, and I'm like, oh, I'm stealing that, because this is such an excellent point, where he says, the Libertarian Party is proof that the labor theory of value is not entirely false, because they focus only on their own inputs and how valuable their own inputs are, and not on what actually it's worth. And whereas the GOP is the subjective value paradigm, and but they want to take this labor theory of value logic of, look at all the good we are doing by being good people, and how that helps for liberty. It doesn't, but we're being good people, so that's the right input. And it's like, well, no. It's not. And I think that's an immoral way of looking at it, because it's not true. Look at the result. Look, if you do a supposedly moral input and get a bad result, an immoral result out of it, or I don't know. I have a tough time calling that moral. It's like, I really think that, because this is something you saw in the Bible a lot too, where God, he didn't just look at what the input was. In fact, he seemed to value that less. What he really seemed to care about a lot more was a good result. Mm-hmm. And like there was a time, where where he's like, okay, yes, there are certain times where it's good to be principled, and you die on that hill because it's the right thing to do. But that it seemed like in those situations it was more because okay, this is you're doing the right thing that would have a right result, and maybe it wouldn't, maybe it just didn't work out, and you went down but you went down fighting for what was right, and you went down doing the right thing that was going to have the right result. You didn't succeed, but that's okay. And that seems like kind of the only exception to that general rule, where he generally focuses far more on good results rather than good intentions. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, and if you intend to be a good person, and that's not really good enough. Intentions don't really make you a good person. In fact, they can make you pretty demonic.
Right. They say that even the devils believe in the name of Christ.
Yes, they do. Yes, right. and shudder.
Right. So to be fair to the libertarians, the reason that they hesitate to, or that they don't want to approach politics in this sense, that they don't want to compromise their principles, is because what they say is, well, if we what's up, John Hartman? What they say, if we act like if we act like people who aren't libertarians to try to achieve a libertarian end, then once we've won, what we won is not libertarian. And so they retreat to acting like libertarians, which gives us the end of not libertarians. So it's like, on one hand, you wind up with something other than libertarianism. And on the other hand, you wind up with something other than libertarianism. Either way, you wind up with something other than libertarianism. At what point do you start questioning the libertarianism? And see, the thing is that people have taken, when libertarianism as a hypothetical, as an ideal, imaginary outcome, is basically kind of just saying good things are good. People who are libertarians are basically people who have identified good things are good. And if we had a society where there was only good things, that would be good. That's the extent of libertarianism. But it doesn't tell you how to get to that. It doesn't tell you how to create good things. It just tells you that good things are good. To get to those good things, you're going to have to do something other than act like you live in a world where there is only good things. So when your principles are, we can't do all of the things that would effectively protect our interests, protect our values, protect the ones we love, and that could actually bring about some sort of world where our values are protected and our loved ones are safe and our interests are protected, then, like, at what point do you realize that you're tilting at windmills in this approach of we can't violate the non-aggression principle. Voting is violating the non-aggression principle. So we have to engage in this region, in this realm of democracy. We have to go out and talk to all of these people who are trying to figure out where to cast their votes. And we have to tell them, actually, don't cast your votes and all will be well. Like, you're just nothing but a big bunch of contradictions, and you come off as very out of touch and insecure with your ideas, and that what you're signaling to other people is, my ideas don't work, so I have to borrow from your ideas to try to tell you how good my ideas are. So people are like, why don't I just stick with my ideas? And you're like, well, if I start acting like you, then we're going to wind up with your world. So I can understand why they would be in the position that they're in, why they'd be hesitant to they're trying to say, well, I don't want to, I don't want to act like a Republican, to try to appeal to Republicans, because then pretty soon we'll wind up with just a whole bunch of Republicans. But you're missing the actual conversation. You're looking at the finished product and trying to engineer the finished product, rather than going to the source and figuring out where we get that finished product from. And that's why there's two different conversations happening. There's the conversation of, how should we engage in the political arena? And then there's the conversation of, should we engage in the political arena? And these people are talking past each other. And both conversations need to be had separately, because there's different prescriptions for each conversation.
But yeah, that's a really good point, because I think as Sal has kind of made that point a whole lot recently, that hey, it really is two conversations. Either we should be engaging in politics or we shouldn't be, and he's solidly in the we shouldn't be, and that's why I think that's a much more consistent with legacy libertarians. I call them legacy libertarians now because I think they're outdated, but. They're kind of like Windows DOS. That's the way I feel. But it's like his position is fairly consistent, that no, this is an aggression, and no, we should not be engaging in it. We should be finding other private means and focusing exclusively on those. And that's a very consistent message. And that, by the way, it's not it has some merit to it, because let's face it, they've got the GOP has actual power, but and they can use it to do good things sometimes, but the LP has nothing. It has no success to its name at all, ever, of any kind. But agorists, they do have cryptocurrency, and they do have counter economics. Like if I wasn't a GOP guy, I would pretty much have to be an agorist guy, because they actually have some success to their name, and their counter economics does have a some merit to it. And now and they're not quite mutually exclusive either. But if you're going to say, hey, we shouldn't be engaging in this system, that's the one approach. But if you are saying, hey, we should be engaging in this system, well, okay, that has to be in order to gain power. It can't that's it's like saying, hey, we should practice. This is like saying, hey, we should practice Christianity, but we can't do the communion part. It's like, well, okay, that's kind of the biggest part. And it's like, because let's face it, again, politics and religion are on the same spectrum. And you're either engaging with the religion and practicing it the way it's kind of supposed to be practiced. This is a religion of power, or you're not. And if you're going to this is the LP argument is like saying, well, we should engage in this religion, but we shouldn't do a good job. We should be bad. We should be bad Christians.
Right. Right.
Like, well, we should be Christians, but we shouldn't be bad. But we can't be good Christians. You know. It's like, okay, we should engage in this religion of statism, but we should be really pathetic and terrible statists that no one wants.
Right. There's one issue that I have with Sal's position, and this is with Agorist in general, is I agree completely. That's an entirely coherent position to say that all politics is aggression, all aggression is wrong, therefore engaging in politics is wrong, and we shouldn't engage in it at all. I think that it's perfectly fine to believe that. But as soon as you start trying to convince other people about that, you are now engaged in politics. Because politics extends to conversations about politics. Conversations about politics is being involved in politics. So you get these people that generally are agorists who think that they have found this position where they can say, oh, I don't get involved in politics at all, but I'm going to comment on it regularly. I don't get in politics. Getting involved in politics is wrong. Don't do it. But I'm going to provide commentary about it. I'm going to get involved in the conversations, and I'm going to critique other people who are getting involved. No, if you're not getting involved in politics, you're not entering the conversation whatsoever. When somebody asks you a question, you say, I don't care. I don't pay attention to that. That's the not getting involved in politics. If you're going to get involved in the political conversation, if you're going to critique people, if you're going to say, oh, well, what this person is doing is wrong. It's wrong for these people to be bombing other people. It's wrong to advocate for this tax increase. It's wrong, yada, yada, yada. Now you're getting involved in politics. You're advocating for a political system, but you're advocating for one poorly. You're doing it in a way that's not productive. So you're doing like what Mr. Popular here is saying, when he says, you're saying, let's be statists and be bad at it. As soon as you're getting involved in that conversation, that is, in any coherent definition of statism, has to include that being involved in the conversation is participating in politics. And if you're going to participate in politics, then you need to participate in politics competently. Because ultimately, participating in politics, if you're choosing to do that, you're using your effort and energy to try to improve the world. And if you're doing that consciously in an inefficient way, that's wrong. It's immoral to use your talents inefficiently, because fundamentally,
yes,
the question isn't about rights. The question is about responsibilities. You have the right to be rewarded for being faithful to your responsibilities. You're not born into rights. You're born into obligations. You're obligated to your family. You're obligated to your wife. You're obligated to your parents. You're obligated to your siblings. You're obligated to your community. You're obligated to your grandparents. You're obligated. You are bound by your obligations, and you will never be free of those obligations, because being free of those obligations isn't freedom. If you're free of those obligations, you have no identity. You don't have an identity outside of your obligations. You are identified by the tribe that you are a part of, which is the network of people to whom you are directly obligated. You must be focused first on your obligations. Fulfill your obligations. Once you've fulfilled them, you'll be rewarded. This is part of where Christianity is just a description of reality. Christianity is describing to you how to hack reality. It says you are born into slavery. You are enslaved by your obligations. If you are faithful to your obligations, you will be rewarded. And you will be rewarded with good things. And the more faithful and true to your obligations you are, the more you will be rewarded. Power is derived through empathy and through the fulfillment of your obligations to other people. That your empathy tells you what your obligations are. When you experience empathy, that's the universe or God or however you want to frame it, it's telling you you have an obligation to this person. If you fulfill that obligation, you will be rewarded. And if you want to say that, oh, it was the universe that rewarded me, it's just cause and effect, and it's just this, naked materialism or whatever. Fine, whatever. Think of it however you please. I'm not in the business of trying to change your mind. I'm in the business of trying to clarify what your mind is already telling you. If you are being faithful and true to your obligations, you'll be rewarded, and you will get the power that you need to actually have an impact on the world. So if that's what you want to practice, if you want to practice agorism, stay out of the political realm altogether. Don't even comment on it. You have no opinions about it. You don't care how anybody is approaching it. You keep it completely separately. You say politics and the rest of life are completely different things. Fine. Be faithful and true to that belief. But the minute that you decide you want to start commenting on it, the minute that you recognize that politics isn't some unique separate thing that runs by different rules, that politics is just the expression of religion in your culture, then you need to be an effective participant in the system. You need to understand how the system works. And you need to be realistic about what you're advocating for. Because if what you're advocating for is we're going to take over this system, we're going to get on the debate stages and we're going to get on all the ballots, and then we're going to tell everybody how bad the Fed is, and we're going to tell everyone that it's their problem for voting for these people. And we're going to tell everybody that the vision of the world that they have is all wrong, and they need to drop all of their values, abandon everything that they've ever supported, and just care about the things we care about. If that's your approach, you're a bad Christian, you're a bad libertarian, you're a bad person. If that's your approach, that's the approach of a bad person. And I think most of these people that are doing this are not bad people. I think they're good people. I think they're very well-meaning. I think they have good intentions. But I think that their minds have been poisoned by living in a world full of propaganda, where they've lost track of what actual reality is. They've gotten unmoored from their grounding. And they're starting to do things like say that the best way that we can try to change the political system is by using the political system to tell people that they shouldn't try to change the political system and they should just what? There's nothing to fill in. All it is we're going to take over the LP and we're going to get on all the ballots and we're going to get on the debate stages and ta-da! It's like I don't know, like doves are gonna fly and fairies are gonna float down from heaven and everyone's gonna have a magical awakening and we're all gonna be ushered into the millennium. And like there's no actual coherent thought behind this. People are wrapped up in this emotional movement where they're like, yeah, we're gonna do just like what Ron Paul did. We're gonna take over just like Ron Paul. We're gonna finish the work that he started. Number one, you're not taking over the GOP like Ron Paul attempted to do. Number two, Ron Paul failed to take over the GOP for the exact same reasons that you will fail to take over anything. You will not take over the GOP. You won't take over the LP. What you can do is you can manipulate local elections. You can manipulate local policy. If you're going to get into politics, that's what you can do. You can manipulate, you can participate in the process, you can throw your weight behind this thing or that thing, take it on a case-by-case basis, and that's the extent of what you'll accomplish through politics. But that will only ever matter if there's if there's a group of people who are simultaneously working on something that isn't politics, something that will replace politics, so that you can have an actual call to action in the event that someday you can take over a political party.
And again, it's an inefficiency. You have an obligation to be efficient because again, might makes right, responsibility makes right. When we say might makes right, what we really mean is responsibility makes right, because being mighty is an extension of, it's one of it's probably the most important responsibility. Being strong is the most important of all of your responsibilities, because you can't do any of the others without it. This is the cardinal virtue of fortitude that the Christians figured. Again, I always say that by the time libertarians finally get to the top of the mountain, they're going to find a whole bunch of theologians waiting for them.
Right.
It's like, yeah, we figured this thing out 2,000 years ago. You ready to join us? I'm trying to figure the rest of it out. And if you look at like the four cardinal virtues, these are these are all the things that libertarians have like kind of been trying to draw, but they don't want to say it's this, and they want to claim that like this is kind of a new thing, and it's not. We've been trying to figure out how to get societies to have these four cardinal virtues, or 5-ish, that for like 2,000 years now. Because you can't really have a good society without them, and to the extent you can have a society, you really need a substantial majority of people practicing all four. But if you don't, then it's not going to work. And what they've kind of done is drawn. They've kind of skipped. Remember how what's his face? Yarvin talks about don't skip steps.
Mm-hmm.
And they've skipped all the steps and skipped to the end. Okay, this is what the end society should look like, and we're going to completely ignore everything about how to get there, because how to get there, really looks like quite a lot different than what this thing looks like. And they just think, oh, if we just all start, this is the same. It's the same attitude. Well, if people wouldn't sin, then we wouldn't have any problems in society. Yeah, right. That's true. It's people should just stop sinning. It's that simple. And the problem there is people want to, it's like and you're ignoring all of the steps of really getting people to live that way. And because right now they don't want to, and they're kind of burying their heads in the sand, pretending that, oh, all people are good and they just want to live peacefully, and they have and the proof is, look at their intentions. and again, this is why I have such a poor view of intentions, is that they don't really mean anything. People intend a lot of good. Remember, and that's actually one of the markers of evil, is that it pretends to be good.
Mm-hmm.
And that,
right.
No one's the villain in their own story, because they want to do good. They just don't know. They just don't really know how, and they have a really confused idea of what good is, and that's why you can't judge goodness by intentions. You have to judge it by results. And you can't say, this is a left versus right, paradigms, that right wingers will tend to focus a lot more on right results, whereas the left wingers will look a lot more like right feelings and right intentions. Right. And you can always, and this is one of those shit tests that you can tell, which side a person really is on, by whether they really, which one do they value more, right results or right intentions. And if they really, it's like it doesn't, they'll turn around and make like a utilitarian argument to say, oh, well, utilitarianism is wrong because, if I can, it's like, if I can, what was it, save 10 people by killing one and harvesting their organs, okay, that's wrong because I didn't have the right to do that. Well, it's like, no, you're not even following the utilitarian logic even to its end, because if you do that, what kind of society is that going to create? It's going to create a hellish one. So right. That's not actually
utilitarianism. Yep.
Yeah, and and they have to resort to straw men in order to do it, and they have to resort to untruths and inefficiencies a way of doing it. And this is another thing that I've noticed about this more brand of like kind of left-wing libertarianism that I think Dave represents. And again, he's not like a left-wing libertarian, but he's a lot more to the left than most of the paleo libertarians I really like. But one thing you'll notice about every single kind of false religion is they don't tend to make much demands on you as a human. And and a lot of times they'll even play into kind of your worst instincts as a human, and which are usually bad. And and this is they'll encourage a high time preference behavior on you on a lot of things. And what I noticed with a lot of these more LP types is they have two major vices that I think that that I'm like, okay, this is a more of a high time preference religion than you think it is. Because what it's kind of demanding on you is sloth and cowardice, because like you don't want to. These are two cardinal sins or cardinal vices, and if your religion is demanding these of you, like this is a you really better take a look at this, because this doesn't look good. This is probably false. This is a marker of a false religion. Let me explain that. And sloth is saying that you don't really need to work to work that hard to be a part of the LP, because let's face it, you're not going anywhere. So the expectation is lower for you. And that is attractive to a lot of more high time preference people, because they don't really want to work that hard. And not to say that taking over the LP isn't hard work, but it's really not. You're kind of just showing up and voting because there's so few of them. You're just overwhelming them by sheer numbers, by just showing up. It's like all you did was like show up once, and this is like the extent of your engagement. and you're not like going out walking miles and miles and miles like I did and dozens of other activists who worked with me did last year in 2020 when we were trying to knock on doors and get out every single last vote, and in a 50-50 election. And the other one, that it's the other vice that really stands out to me is they don't want to engage the enemy. They're engaging the enemy from a very, very safe distance where nothing's going to happen to them because they're not going to get far enough. Again, they have this low expectations that they have reveals how high their time preference is for safety. Mm-hmm. And it's like they don't want to do it. If you were like, okay, imagine like Rand Paul. This guy has a ridiculously low time preference. This guy's had multiple like assassination attempts basically, because he's that effective. He's that effective, and he's still going. And that really shows you how true his virtue is, and how different that is from the virtue of these LP types who are just like, we're going to engage a little bit, but only from a very safe distance where we can't really do anything, and they don't feel threatened, so they're not going to do anything to us. So, and that really just shows cowardice, because you're not willing to, kind of stay like I had to walk through a whole bunch of neighborhoods I never would have wanted to walk through otherwise. It's like, and I knocked on doors where, like, this is a majority, like, we don't speak English neighborhood. And I'm still sitting there, hey, I got to get out every last vote, and I got to convince every last person. And you know what? Like, there were a few times where people were like, no, you need to leave. And like, I'm going to fucking call the cops on you. And it's like, and I'm like, oh. And, but it's like, I like, okay, I'm leaving. Bye. And I just go knock on the next door. And, and I kind of freaked. That was like the very first door I knocked on was one of those. Huh. So I learned how to deal with it because I know the guy taught me how to deal with it. But that's the thing they don't want to do. It's like, they don't want to do that kind of hard work and risk failure. And they're not willing to take risks. They're not willing to work hard and do what it really takes to not even take over. Because again, we already established you don't need to take over a party. You just need to be an influential part of it, and you can get what you want. Like, look at the abortion people. Like, you've had a very small minority of people who are like, we are fucking not budging, and we will do whatever it takes for 7 decades since Roe v. Wade. I think it's like 7 decades, 6 or 7 decades since Roe v. Wade to, we will, take over every single seat in the Supreme Court. We will do whatever it takes. We will show up to every election. We will knock on every single door. We will pass every law we possibly can to always stay on offense against the abortionists who are killing babies. And they mean it. And they're not a majority. They're not a majority, and they're still getting what they want. Like, you're up to like 11 states now that have just straight up banned abortion, and there was already like 24 that had basically banned it. But it's like in Missouri, there was like prior to Brett Kavanaugh where they just like straight banned it. After they straight banned it afterwards, but prior to that, there was only one abortion clinic in the whole state. It's like that. Like that's how much the right wingers have been fighting them on this. Those abortionists, the anti-abortionists, or the pro-lifers, they. And
what have libertarians accomplished against abortionists?
Yeah, nothing, and nothing at all. And they haven't ended any wars. They haven't saved any children. They haven't cut any taxes. They haven't saved anyone's guns. Nothing. What have they done? And whereas like I can point to right wingers, I can point to the gun group. Again, gun owners are they're like half a majority, but people who think that there should be more gun control, they're in the majority. Most people think there should be more, which is not good. But you know why we're up to I think 21 states now, because Texas just passed it. Texas just passed it to say constitutional carry. Anything goes. You can basically own anything you want, and it's we're basically becoming a sanctuary state for the Second Amendment. Except for like criminals, and okay, I can live with that. Good enough. That's I understand. Okay, criminals should still be allowed to have some of their right to self-defense, but hey, I can live with only criminals being not allowed to have guns in the state of Texas, and there are 21 and 20 other states just like it. They're not a majority, but they're winning, and they're getting their ideas legislated into law because they're doing the actual work that it takes with the GOP in order to get that done. And if and by the way, I think we're up to like 5 or 6 states now that have actually started to really take the fight to the teacher unions. Governor DeSantis again has led the way on this, where like I went to a private school and my parents had to pay out of pocket to that, and they couldn't really afford it. It really put them into debt because the public schools in my area were just that bad and that awful. Like there was like inner city levels of gang violence and shit and stuff, and they're just like, all right, we'll suffer. We will really suffer to put our kids to better schools. Now, thanks to Governor DeSantis, there's I could have gone, kids at that same private school, they can all go on public scholarship, and that and those my parents would not have had to suffer the way they did. But and there are Republicans that are really pushing hard for these ideas that that libertarians claim to stand for, but are just not being a part of any solution. They don't want to work with anybody. And
right. That's the where they're letting purity, they're letting this pursuit of the perfect fundament, or like ultimately defeat the good.
No, it's sloth. Purity is an excuse for them. It's an excuse for cowardice, and it's an excuse for sloth, because they haven't gotten anything done, and then they claim, right wingers never get anything done. It's like they're doing plenty, and like that's just unfactual. It's like you were just ill-informed if you think
the reason that right wingers aren't getting more things done is because libertarians are sitting there taking pot shots, and they're not actually getting off their asses and actually contributing to the movements that can accomplish things, which is ultimately a like letting the I was thinking of Dave just now in the debate I was listening to, which I mean, debate is kind of putting it strongly. They're not really debating; they're just having a conversation. But the first thing, as soon as he talks about DeSantis, the first thing that he does is he brings up, okay, well, here's all the ways that DeSantis is bad. So how could you work with him, or how could you support the idea of a DeSantis president? And it's not like this conversation I'm getting to the point where I'm not even going to have this conversation anymore, because his response to Tho essentially is premised on, if I could pick anybody in the world and snap my fingers and make them president, I would make it be Ron DeSantis. He's responding to Tho as if that's what Tho is proposing, or the people who support the idea of Ron DeSantis for president. This isn't how politics works. And I was having a conversation with my dad about this yesterday, that this is a facet of Western liberal thinking, like liberal, like properly speaking, not just like Democrats, but like Western liberal thinking, going all the way back to the Enlightenment, has this instinct where in every single situation they want to abstract out and universalize everything. Everything has to be universalized, and I think what this gets at is this. I don't know. We can't really go too deep into this today because it'd just take too long. But it's this Enlightenment position that has basically removed God from the picture and placed the ideal human self as God in the society. And then it's this. Then liberals, Western liberals, now see themselves as this is kind of ironic for this show, but they see themselves as the people who can engineer the perfect world. And all we have to do is we have to take what we have right now. We're just a little tweak away from getting the perfect thing. So we just need to make a little tweak around the edges. Okay, now we'll stand back and everything's going to be great. Oh no, something else went wrong. Okay, got to make another little tweak. Okay, now we're going to stand back and everything's going to be fine. And it's like, with each decision point that you approach, you're not saying, how can I derive utopia with this single decision that I make? You're dealing with the decision right in front of you. And if the decision in front of you is DeSantis versus Kamala Harris, if you're going to say, I abstain because DeSantis is really bad on Israel, this isn't the point where that issue is being decided. You need to deal with the issue that's right in front of you. I don't give a shit what's happening in Israel right now. I care about mask mandates. I care about vaccine passports. I care about abortion. I care about the things that are actually affecting me and my family and my community right now. And if there's something that can tweak that even remotely in a positive direction, I'm going to participate in that. Because if I don't, I'm implicitly accepting the worst outcome. And I'm saying I would rather have that worse outcome than a better outcome if I can't have my perfect outcome, which gets back to, like you said, sloth and cowardice.
And it's not just, and I think you just touched on something extremely important about messaging, because I mean, you work with like the god of all marketing and messaging, Jason Stapleton, and what is the like the number one rule of marketing is sell the customer what they want to buy.
Yes.
Whatever they're wanting to buy is what you sell them. And I'm sorry, no one cares about Israel. It's like, this is another reason why I think what they're going to do, with this messaging isn't going to work at all, because, they're like it's like right now people really, really are like, okay, a lot of people are still locked in their homes. They're facing a 45% retroactive capital gains tax increase from Biden. And multiple $1 trillion spending bills that look horrible. And there's an economy that's just been devastated. And you're talking about Israel. There's like a few dozen people are dying. It's more than that. A few hundred people are dying in some shithole in the third world in the Middle East. Most people just hate this. It's like, I hate the Middle East. I want nothing to do with them. It's like, and you're spending your time getting sidetracked on, talking about how horrible Israel is or whatever, and it's what a tragedy it is to do the Palestinians. It's like, buddy, there are bad things happening to me, and I care more about that. It's right. Like, it's everybody else.
This is just it's just revealing tremendous political naivete. Also, that you're going to be able to have some sort of influence on what happens in Israel with like who you elect president, like who gets elected president. If you think that those problems are going to be solved on the federal electoral level, you are a political nitwit. You don't like this is the libertarian thing where nobody has deified the state quite like fucking libertarians. The state is not the end all be all. If you think that if like they want to get involved in politics to solve every single problem known to man. You're not getting into politics to solve every problem known to man. That's not the responsibility. When you're trying to vote for someone in a local election or even a federal election, you're trying to solve the problem immediately at hand. You don't need to solve every problem that's going to come after that. That's not where you're going to ever solve it. You're going to solve those problems innovating in the private sector and playing the lobbying game. That's where you're going to solve those problems. If you're getting involved in electoral activism, you're doing it for very narrow purposes. This is just the nature of the state. This is the limitations of democratic politics. This is the libertarian criticism of democratic politics, that you can't solve all these problems this way. So then why are you judging your candidates based on that? If you're getting involved in the process of supporting candidates, then support the candidates for solving problems that can actually be solved. Not every single problem known to man, not like our policy on the space race and our policy on like every single possible thing has to be considered. And if this guy doesn't fit every single possible thing, that's how important your vote is, that you have to like solve every single problem with the vote that you cast. Nobody has deified voting more than fucking libertarians.
And it's done out of selfishness, because what they're doing essentially is, instead of selling the customer what the customer wants to buy, they're selling the customer what they want to buy. And it's like it's just a self-centeredness that I don't understand. They have no empathy for other people, because if they did, they would understand, okay, this is what they're wanting to buy, this is what I should be selling, and I shouldn't be talking about fucking Israel. It's like, and it's like, for all the crap they give neocons about supporting Israel, like they care more about Israel than the neocons do, for God's sakes. And it's like the only people they're trying to sell to are the neocons who are against them. Those are the only two groups of people who care about Israel. It's the libertarians. It's not even like the good libertarians, like it's the bad libertarians that really care a lot about Israel.
And if you actually cared about Israel, then you would participate in the political process in a way that will actually have some sort of impact on Israel in the way that you want it to. So
You're
again,
like,
it
go
comes
put a
back to
candidate up
efficient
against Liz
action.
Cheney. Go put a good libertarian candidate in the GOP primary against Liz Cheney.
Right.
And nail her to the wall. It's like that's one scalp that's easy to do. If you really cared about Israel, you'd be running in the GOP primary against the worst of the worst neocons. It's like identify the worst neocons you can find and run good candidates against them and fund and just do them one at a time the way the other people are doing. Because guess what? The GOP, the rest of the coalition, we hate the neocons too because they lied us into a war and humiliated our party, and that all for lies and selfishness, and and they killed millions of people. None of the rest of the coalition of the Republican Party likes that, and we threw them out. It's like Liz Cheney and Bush. It's like we threw all of the neocons out, and the LP types were still saying, oh, like what? But what are you gonna do to throw the neocons out? How are you gonna fight them? It's like, bitch, we won already. It's like we won. It's like they're defeated. They're not in our party anymore. They're in the Democrat Party now because that's the only people who would take them. Which is really telling. It's like they went back to the left where they came from. And by the way, I should give credit to Mark Metz in the comments for pointing out that libertarians sound like neocons when they talk about Israel, because it's like those are the only two groups that care about it, and the rest and I have a similar product with it's like only neocons and libertarians seem to care about that because they're the only ones who are like really, really left wing and self-centered, because that's what it is to be a lefty. You're a self-centered narcissist.
But only one of those two groups is actually having any sort of impact on what happens, and it's the people who understand how power works. So if you actually cared about these issues, then you would be trying to do something that would change it, not just shouting into the void. And not, I don't want to keep going round and round and round about this. I want to back out a little bit because I want to clarify. I don't have much time left here. I got to go in just a minute.
I'm in the comments right now. I can't talk.
But I want to zoom out again and get back to these two different conversations that are happening, because I'm blending these as I'm talking as well. I'm seeing it happening.
Mm-hmm.
Where on one hand, you have the conversation of, if we're going to get into politics, what are we going to do? How are we going to approach? What's our strategy once we get into politics? But that has to be informed by, should we get into politics or not? And then the question of should we get into politics or not hinges on, what sort of world are you trying to create? If the world that you want is the libertarian world, which I want to get back to saying that libertarians have identified what a good world would look like. They've successfully identified that. The ideal, like Ancapistan, is what an ideal world would look like.
It's an ideal Christian world.
It's an ideal Christian
good
world,
job.
right? So
you managed to figure out what the Christians have been talking about for 2,000 years. Good job. That's your success. Is you managed to figure out the Christian. You managed to figure out the Christian societies should look like.
And there's a reason for that too, because it's because liberalism is just trying to create Christianity without Christ. And libertarianism is the full realization of liberalism. But so once you've determined that, there's multiple steps to this process here. So first of all, you need to determine, what does the ideal world look like? What can I do to affect that? If something I can do to affect that involves getting involved in politics, then what would be the best way to do that? So there's multiple levels of reasoning there. There's what can I do to bring about the best possible world? If within that is getting involved in politics, then that will inform what you should do once you get into politics. But people start mixing all these conversations up. And they'll be answering the question of, should we even get into politics, with, this is what we should do in politics. No, you have to solve these questions. You have to solve these problems one at a time. And the answers are going to be different for different people. There's going to be people who shouldn't be getting involved in politics at all. They don't want to. They have moral compunctions against it, whatever. They're the agorists. There's a fantastic place for them to be in the innovation space. I think that's the most important space, is the innovation space. Where right now, libertarians' call to action sucks because they don't have anything else to call people to, because that thing hasn't been innovated yet. It's going to be some evolution. We have our theories here at this show. It's going to be some evolution of like Moldbug has his joint stock corporation, and there's monarchy, and there's different variations. These things need to be thought through and innovated and engineered. This solution has to be engineered so that you can present someone to something else. So because if you're going out and you like you don't want people to buy single-use plastics. Say that's your issue. That's your hobby horse. You're like, I really, really care about single-use plastics and their effect on the environment. So you can do two things. You can either get on every platform you can think of and tell people that they're evil for using single-use plastics. And you can tell people how bad it is, and you can show them pictures of all the bad things in the environment that single-use plastics do. And you can guilt trip people. You can play what's her name? You have the sad videos of the dogs. I can't remember the name.
Oh yeah.
You can play her music.
The commercials and stuff like that.
Right.
With all the sad music.
Right. So you could do that. You can do that for single-use plastics. That's one approach that you can take. And there's people that will work with. Like there's a reason people do it. It's not the best approach, but it does yield some fruit. Or the alternate approach is you can go innovate a solution that is better for people, that is more convenient, that's cheaper, or that people can derive some sort of social status from using that replaces single-use plastics. So you can get people, you can make like a super fancy, super cost affordable, like special bags people can take in to do their grocery shopping with, or you can create like special water bottles, or whatever else. You can innovate across a wide range of industries to come up with a solution, and then you present that solution to other people, and you say, you don't approach, Sarah McLaughlin, thank you. You don't approach it and say, your solution sucks, stop using it altogether. You say, hey, look how great my solution is. Look at this alternative that I have that's better. Here's all the reasons why it would be beneficial to you to use this instead. And here, look how easy I've made it for you. In fact, if you use this, then you're going to get lots of social credit points. Everyone else is going to be super jealous of you because they want to have that too. And you create status around the alternative product that you're offering. Those are the two paths forward. And right now, libertarians are planted firmly in the first path, which is fine. It's good to have people that do that. You need to have both strategies, but you can't make that your entire strategy.
And you know what? And you know what works really, really well? What strategy dovetails really well with that? Lobbying. Because you know what? I can, if I make something really better, I can legislate that this is the only way through. And then this is done all the time. It's called, there's actually a term for it called fencing language, where, I have my thing and I'm going to write the law, and kind of draw a fence around this thing. I want this is my money in the middle, and I'm going to draw these legal lines of fences around it to say this is the only one that's allowed. And that's called fencing language in the lobbying. And you write fencing language in order to exclude all of your competition. And you could do that really, really easily. It's agorism, and I think the GOP lobbying strategy, the GOP strategy, which is again twofold. It's electoral and it's lobbying, because you can lobby them because they have actual power to be lobbied in the first place. Right. And by the way, if you're cheap, lobbying's the way to go.
It's much less costly.
That is so true. Again, these people will sell their grandmothers for a $2,500 check,
right?
And it's like,
you have to get over your moral compunctions with that, because you have to realize this is the nature of the game. And if you're getting involved in politics, you're saying, I'm okay with playing this game. If you're not okay with playing that game, don't get involved in politics, because that's how politics runs. The whole electoral thing, that's all a dog and pony show to run cover for the money exchanging hands behind the scenes. So if you don't want to get involved in money changing behind the scenes, then stay out of politics altogether. Go the agorist route. Don't even comment on it. But the worst thing you can do is you can get involved in politics and you can take the worst possible approach. There's a reason why people don't like libertarians. There's a reason why libertarianism doesn't sell to people. It's not because they haven't heard about it. It's because they have heard about it. And they don't like libertarians. They don't want to have anything to do with them because they're assholes. And they're awkward. They're uncomfortable. They've got weird ideas. They don't know how to communicate them to people. And they like associate themselves with weird things. And people just don't like it. And you can complain about that all you want, but that's just a fact of the matter. And you're not going to solve that problem by getting yourself in front of more people. The message has to change first. And this is what I'm trying to get at with these multiple layers. I've got to get wrapped up here because we've got the little man is locked out of the hotel room here. But the these are the multiple things the levels that have to be solved. You have to have a product to sell to people before you go and try to start presenting it to them. And the LPMC, the Dave Smith Libertarians, don't have a product to sell. They think that they do, but their product is in beta, is not even in beta yet. And they're trying to get out and sell it now, which, all right, fine. Because I want to.
It's past the whiteboard test.
Right.
In software development, I call it the whiteboard test, where it's, I've managed to put the idea onto the whiteboard.
Right. So, now you have to make it palatable. You can do active harm to your product by trying to sell it before it's ready to be sold. And I want to make sure, I'm not in this business necessarily to try to make enemies. I get passionate and I'm demonstrative when I talk about this stuff because I care about it. But I'm very interested in having a conversation with people and in dialogue. And I don't want people to think that I'm just out here to like make pot shots at people and not back it up or anything. And go ahead.
I'm going to bring this into reality for 1 second because because the reason you and I both kind of admire like agorists is like, okay, they do real innovation, and I think what would be a really good thing to do is to have dovetail that with a lobbying strategy through the GOP. And you know what, there are people who are specialized, but kind of like you and me, who are specialized for that. That we can take a product that the agorists innovate and help grease the wheels of power to, legislate that into a more powerful position, like Bitcoin. We could, there was an opportunity that was just completely missed by, kind of a more classic libertarian, Rand Paul, where he could have, the agorists have invented Bitcoin and he could have given it some sort of tax preferential status. You didn't have to give it like the full immunity or anything. He probably could have gotten it, but just even a tax preferential status, as a cryptocurrency would have been great. And like these things go together very well. These strategies can work together very nicely. Another thing would be like ghost guns. Instead of we can see what's coming down the loop because no one's lobbying for them. And a whole bunch of lefties are lobbying against them. And, we can do a lot of good to, start pushing like ghost gun legislation that puts that into a more powerful position, where it can do more good. And these things can work together. But you know what? You can't do that with the LP.
Right.
And all you can do is make yourself feel good about being a good intentioned person. Right. I'm not even going to call you a good person. I'm going to call you a good intentioned person. And because that doesn't distinguish you from anybody else on the planet. I'm sure Hitler thought he was doing the right thing too.
The LPMC is literally Hitler.
Literally indistinguishable.
To bring this around home, I want to be as magnanimous as I can be, and I want to assume the best of people and assume we didn't really get into this conversation. I wanted to the Twitter conversation with this guy Daniel, who was asking. He's kind of like, what do I do? Where do I go from here? And this is what I if he's still watching, if he's paying attention, Adam Patrick was saying. He asked, my question to you is, while you guys are trying to talk and discuss about these things, which is fair, I enjoy reading about these things as well, what should libertarians do while people are dying in wars, people are getting thrown in jail for victimless crimes, the debt, etc.? And Adam said, create something better. And he said, yes, but if I'm following an incomplete philosophy or I'm lacking something, maybe my current action should be the opposite of what my Catholic and libertarian values tells me is the correct thing to do. Maybe I should be a statist atheist or something. I'm not sure what he meant by that. But Adam said, maybe I find the path forward to center around creating something new and seeing how it plays out rather than breaking down and leaving it to chance. Let the market show you what works and what doesn't. That means creating, not destroying or fixing. I think that's a great observation there, that creating doesn't have to be fixing. You don't need to try to tweak the existing system. That's what going through the LPMC is, trying to tweak the existing system. That's probably not the best path forward. And it definitely doesn't need to be the only path forward. But and Daniel's issue with that was, he said that when you start saying something more or something like that, he says people go down rabbit holes and there's the suffering and death all around us. It's like, I think the guy's like bearing the weight of the world on his shoulders, and he's mixing up these different processes that have to happen. If you don't have a product to take to market yet, don't worry about the politics side of it. Don't worry about the electoral aspect of it. That's a dog and pony show. That there's minor value if you participate in it in the correct way, in the right way. You can kind of accomplish little things here and there, but you have to be very strategic and pragmatic about it. That's a luxury for people who already have a product to offer. Libertarians don't have a product to offer right now. They don't have anything to sell people that's going to be palatable on the national stage. You have to make your product palatable first, which means you have to take it from the abstract hypothetical to the actual real, toes in the dirt, real life thing. Now, I know that I'm not going to talk people who are already committed to the LPMC out of it. So I want to say that if you're already into it, like Dave is pot committed at this point. There's no way he's backing up. Even if he was to suddenly have his mind changed, there's no way he's going to back out of what he's doing now. So I want to say that there is value in taking the approach that they're taking. It's not 100% without value whatsoever. You can accomplish certain things, but you need to be realistic about what you're trying to accomplish, and you need to be honest about it. If you're going into this take over the LP thing with this idea that I'm hearing them talk about, these like grandiose aspirations that, we're gonna make it into the debates and we're gonna have a real third party and we're gonna get these messages and spit this hot fire on all the top platforms, yada 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 yada. You are being baited with a carrot. You're being dragged along with that carrot, and the minute that you try to pick it up, you're gonna get snapped up in a bear trap. You're being baited in to be made a fool of, and to be used by the cathedral, for lack of a better term. You're being baited to be used by the cathedral as a punching bag and as a predicate for even worse violations of liberty down the road. That's what you're being baited into. So what you can do from this is you can improve your own personal status. You can use this opportunity. Dave can use this opportunity to massively expand the reach of his show. He can say, I'm in the business. There's no way that I'm going to solve these problems through politics. You're never going to solve these problems through a democratic process. It doesn't matter what political party you take over. The structures of corruption are so deeply rooted that nothing like that will ever happen. What I can do is I can raise my own profile. I can make myself fucking rich off of this. I can get a whole bunch of people talking about me, and I can get a whole bunch of people listening to my podcast. Because if you come listen to my podcast, you're going to get a different view of the world. You're going to get someone who spits hot fire. I'm not afraid to call it like it is. I'm not afraid to call out corruption across the aisles. I don't care who it is. You're all corrupt. This is a completely broken and flawed system, and it can't be saved. It needs to be destroyed. And people need to create something new. And as soon as people create something new I can throw my support behind, there I am. I'll be behind it. So I'm here on this stage here as a protest. Like, I'm not going to win. I know that even if I was to win, even if I was to appeal to the masses, even if I was to be the most popular candidate, I wouldn't win. Look what they did to Donald Trump in 2020. Of course I'm not going to win. There's going to be some other shadowy cabal that shows up and fortifies the election and makes sure that I won't win, because that's the nature of this system now. That's the message that you can sell. The message that you're going to sell isn't, oh, everyone, just like abandon politics and like what, like I don't like whatever you're trying to do. The message I just mentioned, that's the message that you can sell. The message is personal enrichment. I'm going to benefit from this in the best way possible to increase my platform so that I can reach more people with this message. Because this system isn't going to change from the inside out. The system is going to collapse from the inside in. It's going to collapse on itself. And when it does, you better be surrounded by people who share your values, who actually are like actually good people who want to see a better world. You're not going to find that in the political system. You're going to find that out here. You could deliver that message to some degree of success. It's going to cost a fucking shit ton. That's going to be the level of opposition and personal danger and stress and everything that you're going to have to go through to do that. You're gonna get out the other side and be like, it totally wasn't worth it. You could have accomplished all of that through different avenues, but you can do that through this platform. But the only way that it's gonna ever be worth it in any sense is if the majority of everyone's efforts are focused on, number one, the agorism side, the innovation side, and then number two, the lobbying, money changing side, where it's actually working at local levels.
Lobby the states, lobby the local governments, because that's where your money is going to have the most impact. Right. And I think this is where we can, kind of conclude it, is that, again, this focus on national politics and national messaging really misses the most important point is of what's achievable. Because right now, there are a lot of things at the state level. All of the progress the right-wingers have ever made is at the state level. Like, notice that the right-wingers, the conservatives, and the red team libertarians, every bit of progress they've ever made is all at the state level. They haven't made jack shit at the national level because that's a completely different system, and it faces no competition. There's no real incentive to do better. At the states, that is a very different thing. And you know what's really interesting? This is something I noticed down there. The cathedral doesn't have control of the states.
Because they haven't focused on it, because it hasn't been of any value to them. Yeah.
No, it's not that it doesn't have value to them. It's that it's too much. It's too many races. Remember, the cathedral. Remember, this is the central weakness of the left in general, is that they're central planners, and if there's too many variables for them, they can't handle it. And that's effectively what you have is they can manage the governors because there's only 50 of them. They can kind of manage the attorney generals because, again, there's only like 50 of them. And they can kind of manage like the leaders of each house in each state, and because there's less than 100 of those, and because some are single chambers, and and that's about the extent of it. And they can't even get all of them. They don't have all of them. And something you notice really quickly is that their defenses when it comes to the states are very, very limited, only to the very top. And
but what's going to change that?
Their capacity.
What's going to change that is a big hullabaloo at the national level, getting everybody looking at the LP and saying, "Hey, we're taking over the LP and we're going to change all of this." That's what's going to get the local level. Like, if your goal is to make change at the local level, then having a big national level campaign where you like really try to get lots of people thinking on this and focusing on this, and you get yourself the news and all of that, you're going to be working against being able to use the LP to do stuff at the local levels, because all of that is all happening. The where you can do the most good is behind the scenes. It's like under the radar. You don't want the media looking at you when you're doing that local level work. If you do get the media paying attention to you because some hotshot comedian is on the national level trying to get himself on the national stage to spit that hot liberty fire shit, then you're just going to be working against yourself at the local level.
You're calling the Eye of Sauron to you.
Exactly.
And it's like they're going to crush you. Right. It's like the cathedral does have, like, if you call attention to yourself, they can focus on you. But and shout out to John Hartman. This is something he and I are about to talk about tonight, is that Sun Tzu in his Art of War, he says you can always be assured of victory if you attack things which are not defended.
Right. Right.
and that's why I say, when you focus on the national level, you're focusing on something that is basically the equivalent of a walled city, which he says never lay siege to a walled city. This is a great way to lose because it squanders all your money. And this is why you should be like going after things that are really achievable. Like we have plenty of 160 something Ron Paul clones that Young Americans for Liberty have elected to state houses. And this is achievable. You can easily get Ron Pauls elected to state houses. That's not hard. And if you're donating your money to Young Americans for Liberty, they do get real good work done. Their Operation Win at the Door actually works. And it's like, you can get people elected. You can get real power that makes a real difference. And you can you could also turn around and use that money for lobbying the correct people who have the power already. Say, hey, I have this idea that's better. And I think this is going to help you win more power. I think this is going to be better for the Republican Party. And I think this is going to help us all. And this is a win-win-win, except for the left, because they're getting punished. That's a good strategy. It's like that will work. That will work. And the Eye of Sauron, they're not there to stop you in most things. That's why right-wingers are able to make gains in the states they control. It's like, and a lot of times the libertarians they'll have a refrain for this kind of logic where, well, no, look at California. That's a state, and it doesn't, and all the shit that happens there obviously disproves the Republican Party strategy for all states. And and this idiotic idea that that you can't get stuff done at the state or local level because of either one, national politics, which is their other refrain is, because when those like, hey, look at how great DeSantis is at the state level, and then Dave will refrain and say, well, look at how terrible he is at the national level. It's like, well, he's not a national candidate, and so, like on national issues, like that's usually the refrain is, if I say, look at how achievable good things are at the state,
Right.
they'll say, well, look at how unachievable they are at the national level, or look at how unachievable they are in blue states where I live. And you chose to live because you're a fucking retard. Sorry. Sorry. I don't know why. I have no idea why. I've lived in blue states and red states. And I finally, I moved around like 5 different states. And I finally ended up moving to Texas because like this is so much better. And I think that's where we should leave it, is that, look, there's a lot of achievable things for liberty that don't involve the LP at all. And they involve either lobbying, agorism, or they involve either agorism and innovation of liberty, or they involve legislating the agorist ideas into liberty, or their innovations into reality, and helping the agorists achieve, their innovations achieve a superior power stance. Or you could, win at the state and local level and win real power that, can make real differences. And as we've seen with, Young Americans for Liberty, because they do get good candidates elected. Tom Woods just interviewed like 2 or 3 of them, like Jeff Shipley, Anthony Sabatini. Those are Florida and Iowa, I believe. And turns out Anthony Sabatini is from my home district. I didn't even realize that was my old congressman. But he's great, and you can get a bunch of those guys in there. And if you choose to instead, like the LPMC is raising hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you're focusing all of that on the LP, where it's going to get you nothing. You're not lobbying any new solutions into better positions of power, and you're not getting anybody elected. What's this worth?
You're investing a tremendous amount of time, effort, and energy into something that's ultimately fundamentally a trap. It's designed as a suck to pull you in and to waste your assets on inefficient goals. And now you're going to accomplish a little bit because they don't want you to abandon it. They want you sucked in there. So they're gonna give you small wins. You're gonna accomplish little things. But if you're focused on specifically, when you talk about politics, there's lobbying, there's all this other, but if you're focused on electoral politics and specifically national level electoral politics, and even more specifically, national level LP electoral politics, you are focusing your effort and energy in the least productive avenue possible. And I've got to wrap this up here. So I just want to remind everybody to go to Paloma Verde CBD.com, use promo code KING for 25% off any order over $75. And I just want to say one last thing, which is that all these conversations,
about to run out.
Okay, all these conversations are about, well, what would we do if we had power? And your real conversation needs to be, how can I get power? Because without power, what you would do with it doesn't matter and has no meaning whatsoever. Talk to you later, guys.